February 21st, 2021, on American Airlines Flight 2292, flying between Cincinnati and Phoenix, the pilots experienced a frightening close encounter with what its crew described as a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile, maneuvering extremely fast over the aircraft at 36,000 feet. A seasoned radio interceptor heard the frantic transmissions from the airline pilot through his scanners, who documented the encounter at approximately 1:19 Central Standard Time. The pilot reported, "Do you have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us. I hate to say this, but it looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing, moving really fast right over the top of us." The response was chilling. There were no significant military aircraft present, and nothing was detected on radar. The aircraft flew on to land safely in Phoenix. This incident was similar to an encounter that occurred in the same area 3 years prior, when a Learjet and an airliner both had close encounters with unidentified objects. No investigation followed on either events, and they remain a mystery to this day.
Mysterious lights emanating from what appear to be spacecrafts jettison out of the Earth's atmosphere. Just as the objects come into focus, NASA's live video feed from the International Space Station is abruptly cut off. A growing pattern has emerged over the years. Continual incidents of alien crafts caught on camera hovering over the Earth's atmosphere, or in some cases, departing Earth on course to deep space. Videos of these incidents shared on YouTube have received millions of views and created a public awareness of a deliberate conspiracy to cloak the truth by NASA. One avid observer of the video feeds stated that UFOs do appear regularly, and like clockwork, NASA cuts the feed when the UFO gets close to the station. July 2016, a mysterious object appeared moving towards the International Space Station. A viewer of the live feed stated that it was diamond-shaped. As the object neared the station, the transmission was suddenly terminated. January 2017, an observer was viewing the live feed when suddenly the feed cut out. Seconds later, it came back on and a mysterious object appeared. He stated that at first it was small, then grew bigger, lasting 25 seconds. He commented that it must have been an alien craft due to its odd maneuvers and altitude. In March of 1971, the USS Trepang, a submarine under the command of Rear Admiral Dean Reynolds Sackett, was on its journey between Iceland and Norway's Jan Mayen Island in the Atlantic Ocean. While testing its weapons under the ice caps, the submarine came upon an unidentified flying object by accident. Alarmed by what they were seeing, photographs of not one, but several crafts were taken. These photographs have remained top secret, but were leaked to a French paranormal magazine by an anonymous source. Experts who have analyzed the photos have declared them credible.
3 U.S. Army veterans have withheld their unusual encounter that occurred in 2014 that was ultimately suppressed by their commanding officers. Years later, in light of the Pentagon hearings, the veterans felt comfortable to come forth with what they witnessed. Stationed in the Sinai Desert on the Israel border, they were notified of mysterious aerial objects. Upon investigating, the three witnessed bright, spinning crafts, also seen by another outpost 200 miles away. One of the veterans described it as a big object with several smaller objects which appeared to be communicating or scuffling like a dogfight in the air. We knew it wasn't our military, and it was baffling. To this day, I've never seen anything like the craft, covering such distance with extreme speeds. The crafts were observed with night vision goggles, and it was determined that the biggest one was ovular, the size of a jumbo jet flying at an altitude of 30,000 feet, at an estimated several thousand miles per hour. The smaller crafts darted around the large craft like fireflies, left, right, up and down, making instantaneous high-speed turns. Eventually, the smaller crafts merged with the larger one, and it disappeared. The Egyptian and Israeli militaries were consulted to confirm if they could identify what these objects were, but couldn't explain the sighting. The veterans were trained observers, familiar with all types of aircraft, and they were unable to report what they witnessed because they couldn't determine what they were. One of the veterans was reprimanded by his superior officer for discussing the encounter and received numerous violations as an effort to get him fired over allegations that he had mental issues. The other two veterans were equally persecuted and betrayed by senior Pentagon officials, ironically on the same day that the Pentagon held the congressional UFO hearings.
Defense Intelligence Agency analyst John Maynard recounted this exchange. I said, "Now this is supposed to be a system that tracks radar anomalies on Earth, right?" He says, "Yep, that's what it does." So I ask, then why are half of them pointed towards outer space, towards the moon, towards areas that are just blank space? What are they looking for? He says, "You've got to have a need to know to get an answer." We go back to a comment made by one of the astronauts when he stepped on the moon. It was the day after they got there, and he says, "You're right. They're already here." It went out on the airwaves. I know several people who recorded it. It was quickly taken out of all the tapes that were publicly broadcast. NASA Department of Energy Harland Bentley revealed this. "I was in a facility in California doing classified work. Our astronauts were doing a loop around the moon. I heard them say they had a bogey coming in at 11 o'clock. It was another type of ship. There were portals there that they could see in. They could see beings of some sort. They just took photographs. After a few thousand miles, they took off from the capsule and went away."
One of the cases, for instance, involved a 200-foot diameter disc, estimated, sitting on the ice pack ahead of an approaching B-29, and as the B-29 got close enough to get a pretty good look at it, it jumped into the air and flew away. Now, this 200-foot diameter ship left the ground, leaving nothing behind, no ground equipment, not even an oil slick on the ground. When we'd launched a B-29 for those missions, we had a sea of equipment around the B-29, bigger than the B-29 ever was, left behind when it took off. Another report we had was of one that emerged from the water and flew away in front of the B-29. We had one report where estimated 60-foot diameter disc got in the slot between the big wing and the little wing on the right side of the airplane, and they got pictures with all the cameras and the recording equipment aboard the airplane, electrical disturbances, radio frequency disturbance, magnetic disturbance, all of those things in one incident, and they rotated the crews past the window on that side so they could all get a look at it, including the forward crews. And those were sent to Washington. You never heard any of those. We had an incident that happened over Tucson. in, oh gosh, I think it was about 1975 or 76, where a B-29 bomber was refueling on a tanker over the Catalina Mountains north of Tucson. And while they were doing this, a big disc, about 60 feet in diameter, came in close to the refueling operation as though it was observing it, and both the tanker crew and the B-29 crew watched it. And it stayed there for 12 to 15 minutes. They all rotated the crews again, everybody got a look at it. They reported this in their coded reporting, and when the airplane landed, the crews were separated and into separate rooms, and headquarters, Air Defense Force, Western Air Defense Force area was notified. When Rudy Pestalozzi went out the door with his team, they see a lot of people standing in the streets all looking up with their mouths open. They looked up, and here's the silvery disc and high station, and another one zipping back and forth over the field like this. By the way, this is the time this has ever been told publicly. So the one that was flying low over the streets then went up on high station, and the top one came down and did the same thing. For about 15 minutes this went on. The people, when the phenomena left, the people went to lunch, but the broad speakers on the base started ordering everybody to their sections for a briefing. Meantime, the section commanders and staff officers were told to assemble their people and tell them that this was a military exercise that they had observed, and it was a secret exercise, and it would be worth their job to say anything to anybody about it, even their family at home. And they got out in the street and they started shooting pictures and taking movies of what's going on. When they got through, they had quite a bit. They had several rolls of 35 millimeter film, about 6 press packs, 4x5 press packs. They had rolls of movie film, and they had the 35 millimeter film, whole roll shot. And they didn't even go to lunch. They closed the photo lab, took all their photo gear over there, and they had the lab people process it out while they watched. They got all their prints, hundreds of prints, because they'd shot in 36 shot rolls in several rolls, and the 4x5 press. So the photo lab printed them all up. So we went out there to see what the base would tell us. They told us nothing happened. So we asked if we could see the files. We talked to the photo lab people that worked on the project, and at this time I had Rudy Pestalozzi with me, who was there at the time and made the reports. And he had retired and moved to Tucson, and I knew him at George Air Force Base before either of us retired. We met, and he was telling me about this report. I never heard anything about it till Rudy retired and came to Tucson, because nothing got in our newspapers and nothing leaked out. It was carefully stopped.
A stunning case, recently declassified, took place in 1992 on an Australian destroyer returning home from an Asian deployment at 2 a.m. on a clear night on the bridge of the destroyer. A Navy serviceman and 4 other colleagues on night watch duty witnessed an unusual cylindrical object hovering over the ship's bridge wing. A sonar technician who would later qualify to become one of the elites of the Australian Navy's Special Forces stated, "I looked up, and there was this long cylindrical silver object, about 20 meters long, with a heat haze around it. It was following us no more than 500 meters away. We could see it very clearly in the night sky. I called out to the officer of the watch, and 5 of us all looked up at this thing for at least a good minute. Then, it instantly accelerated and then disappeared into the distance. The acceleration was amazing, instantaneous. It just disappeared in the blink of an eye." 30 years later, he remains adamant that what he witnessed could not have been a conventional aircraft, balloon, or drone. To this day, he has no explanation for what he and his colleagues saw. Due to the stigma at the time of reporting UFO incidents, he remained silent until now.
What if an advanced alien species constituted the same effort to discover intelligent life in the universe other than their own? And what if our solar system was visited by an alien probe seeking knowledge of inhabited planets? On October 19, 2017, an interstellar object was detected passing through the solar system. It was identified as a small object, estimated to be between 100 and 1,000 meters long, with its width and thickness both estimated to range between 35 and 167 meters. It was notable in astronomical terms because it was the first time an object from outside our solar system was detected to be just passing through. While astronomers and scientists describe the cigar-shaped object as of a purely natural origin, a top Harvard astronomer, Avi Loeb, declared the object as an alien probe. Named Oumuamua, the probe is a light sail floating in interstellar space as a debris from an advanced technological source, Loeb has claimed. Loeb's extraordinarily confident suggestion that it probably came from another civilization could not be easily dismissed. It was moving too fast for an inert rock, Loeb pointed out, zooming away from the sun as if something was pushing it from behind. And if it was a comet spewing jets of steam, the limited observations astronomers made of it showed no sign. Oumuamua was some kind of solar-powered sail to account for its change in speeds, which you would not expect to see from a dead object simply drifting through space. It has been estimated that it will take 20,000 years for the object to travel through the solar system.
I think that the UFO story, the whole reality about the UFO phenomena, has to be told to people, because it's all about people. It's people who have been subject to the sightings. It's people who have been abducted. It's people who have had the contact. So people must know what's going on. No way a government from anywhere in the world should have the right to keep those information secret. Well, the Varginha case is probably the best, well-documented case that we have in Brazil and probably in the world. You know that over 80 witnesses came forward, first-hand witnesses came forward during the first weeks, and they are still coming after it happened. Pieces of the big story that we know that comprises the capture of at least 2 alien creatures in the city of Varginha. We know for a fact, because we have it all documented, plus the witnesses have confirmed and cross-confirmed that one alien was captured in the morning of that day, which was a Saturday, about 10:30, by a fire department and some personnel from the army. It was captured with nets, just like they used to capture wild dogs or monkeys, whatever, or some wild animals, and that approach towns. This is the first one. Another creature was seen at the same day by middle afternoon by 3 girls. At that night of the Saturday, January 20, 1996, that second creature, probably the same one saw by the girls, was also captured by a police car, actually a military police car with 2 policemen inside. The one who was sitting in the passenger seat was Marco Elixerezi, a young guy, 23 years old, plenty healthy, and he was lucky enough to be the one who spotted the creature and grabbed it with his own bare arms, bare hands, got back to the car, put the creature in his lap, and took it to the hospital. But he was very unfortunate because 25 days after that, he died on February 15 of some bacteria attacks, proving that his immunodeficiency system was absolutely destroyed. And army personnel and authorities kept it all secret for lots of time until the UFO researchers started protesting along with the press, and we did so much pressure that eventually information was released about it. And now we have very serious stuff. We have been in touch with the doctor who treated this man. And he gave us a full report about what happened to the man. And he's amazed that in less than 20 days, the man was attacked by 3 different bacteria. His immunodeficiency defense system was absolutely destroyed, and the guy eventually died. Right now, we are dealing with a new amount of very astonishing information that is coming forward gradually, but we already have a lot of information. It comes from a doctor who doesn't want to be identified, unlike the other one who treated Marco Elixerez. This one don't want to be identified. He's a long-term orthopedic surgeon in Varginha, and he was at the hospital, regional hospital, when the second creature that was captured by Marco Elixerez, the guy who died, was brought in. He saw some military movements here and there. All of a sudden, there was a lot of military there, and he was asked to take a look at something. He went to a room, and when he got there was an alien creature. The most important, the hardcore, right, of this information, the nucleus of the information. Then we kept adding things that would come eventually, day after day after day, until now. We keep getting stuff, we could keep getting information. So what started big, getting bigger and bigger. And there is no way authorities can deny what happened, because we have it fully documented. We know the names of everybody involved in anything that took place in Varginha. So they can't just simply say, oh, you don't know anything. Oh, yes, we do, because we have the names, we have done our homework pretty well. We're asking the government to come forward to release these files. We already have 24 to 25 signatures, and very probably we get 30,000 very soon. So I really, honestly, I really don't believe that the government will release the Varginha files, at least for 30 years.
Jackie Gleason will always be remembered as one of America's greatest comedy talents. Born in Brooklyn, New York City, Gleason was a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks, which built his unyielding character and fortitude. Gleason became a workaholic and perfectionist. This passion also extended into his personal life. Fascinated by flying saucers and the unexplained, Gleason created one of the world's greatest parapsychological libraries. The bulk of it resides today at the University of Miami Library. Privately, Gleason was an avid UFO researcher, and the reason for this is astonishing. Gleason had a personal relationship with Richard Nixon, and in one conversation with the president, Gleason asked if there was anything Nixon could tell him about UFOs. Were they real? Were there really alien spacecraft? Nixon reportedly responded, "Well, Jackie, if you could arrange to arrive at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa sometime over the next few days, I'll show you some things that may answer some of your questions." Gleason arrived at the base 2 days later and was escorted to a covert storage facility. Once inside, he passed through several levels of security checkpoints. Finally, Gleason was taken into a large space where unusual debris was scattered across the floor. Suddenly, a light beam struck the center of the room. Gleason was astonished to see what appeared to be a portion of a damaged flying disc floating a few feet above the floor. Gleason was spellbound by what he was seeing, but the surprises didn't end there. A few moments later, Gleason was escorted to another room. In this room were 3 containers with glass windows for viewing. Within the containers were the occupants of the crashed saucer. The officer confided to Gleason that, quote, "The beings were about 4 to 5 feet tall. 2 of the bodies were badly damaged, but one was in very good shape. As Gleason gazed upon the extraterrestrial corpse, the officer added, "This one died later." Gleason studied the being's large oval eyes, grayish skin, and the appearance of being male. Gleason asked the officer if all of the beings were male, to which the officer replied, "Your guess is as good as ours."
In the early 1950s, astronaut Gordon Cooper was assigned to a jet fighter group in Germany. While stationed there, he remembers very vividly the week an entire formation of circular objects passed over the airbase on an almost daily routine. But that's not all. While a project manager at Edwards Air Force Base, just 3 years before entering America's space program, Cooper had assigned a team of photographers to an area of the vast dry lake beds near Edwards. The former astronaut disclosed that while the crew was deployed, they spotted a strange-looking craft above the lake bed, and they began filming it. Cooper says the object was very definitely hovering above the ground, and then it slowly came down and sat on the lake bed for a few minutes. During this time, the motion picture cameras were filming. There were varied estimates by the cameraman on what the actual size of the object was, but they all agreed that it was at least the size of a vehicle that would carry normal-sized people in it. Colonel Cooper was not fortunate enough to be outside at the time of this incredible encounter, but he did see the films as soon as they were rushed through the development process. It was a typical circular-shaped UFO, he recalls. Not too many people saw it because it took off at quite a sharp angle and just climbed straight on out of sight. Where are these films today? Why would Gordon Cooper, a respected and honorable American hero, make up such a story? According to him, UFOs were seen regularly at Edwards Air Force Base.
Another massive bombshell revelation presented to the committee detailed reports of the Defense Intelligence Agency's research into the biological effects of UFO sightings on humans. This entailed burns, heart issues, sleep deprivation, and reported abductions, some resulting in pregnancies. The report determined that these victims had been injured from exposures to anomalous vehicles, especially airborne and when in close proximity. The cause of the burns was determined to be electromagnetic radiation, with additional linkage to energy-related propulsion systems. The DIA issued a dire warning that whatever these objects were, they should be considered a threat to the United States interests. The report disclosed 42 cases from medical files and 300 unpublished cases of people incurring injuries following encounters with these unknown objects. Adding to this phenomena, a professor of pathology at Stanford University has been conducting tests on the brains of people who claim they've experienced a UFO encounter, and the results are very alarming. The professor has published over 300 research articles on the matter and owns 40 U.S. patents. Over the last decade, he has devoted his time to studying retrieved materials from alleged UFOs. He's His interest in the UFO phenomena began when he was asked by military officials to utilize his blood analysis instrumentation to aid with cases of pilots who were in proximity to alleged UAPs and, as a result, contracted horrible brain damage. When pressed if the professor could reveal the more abnormal effects on the brains analyzed with MRIs, he stated, "If you've ever looked at an MRI of somebody with multiple sclerosis, there's something called white matter disease. It's scarring. It's a big white blob, or multiple white blobs, scattered throughout the MRI. It's essentially dead tissue where the immune system has attacked the brain." He added, "That's probably the closest thing that you could come to if you wanted to look at a snapshot from one of these individuals. You can pretty quickly see that there's something wrong." Approximately 100 patients, mostly defense or governmental personnel or people working in the aerospace industry, were inspected. The professor continued, "You have a smorgasbord of patients, some of whom have heard weird noises buzzing in their head, got sick, etc. A reasonable subset of them had claimed to have seen UFOs, and some claimed to be close to things that got them sick. The research into this phenomena further revealed that the victims had an overconnection of neurons between the head of the caudate and the putamen. The caudate nucleus is a pair of brain structures that constitute the basal ganglia. It aids in high-level functioning that includes planning movement, learning, memory, reward, motivation, emotion, and romantic exchanges. The putamen is a large structure located within the brain. It is involved in an extremely complex feedback loop that prepares and aids in movement of the limbs. Signals are transmitted through the caudate and putamen structures to the motor thalamus, brainstem, and motor neocortex, which helps the body with all aspects of physical movement. Sadly, approximately a quarter of the MRI patients who claimed they had a UFO encounter died from their injuries, and the majority were found to have symptoms identical to Havana syndrome. Somewhere deep in the Mojave Desert, a secret hidden base exists inside a mountain where extraterrestrials have resided for several decades. This astonishing revelation came from a retired defense intelligence officer who held a news conference in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. She described a meeting with two unnamed individuals who guided her through the mountain's tunnels to an alien base, where she encountered two aliens of different races. The aliens began communicating with her telepathically and even consented to her revealing their existence. Her assessment of the alien beings was that they present no danger and are peaceful creatures. She stated, "We have an ongoing communication, and I look forward to all of you developing one." Her goal is to orchestrate a meeting between the alien higher beings and a team comprised of unbiased scientists, journalists, a noted documentarian, and even an astronaut inside the mountain base. These first-hand witnesses will then be free to provide their data to the public and media for further scrutiny.
The general belief is that the UFO phenomenon began in the 1940s with the infamous Kenneth Arnold encounter with alien crafts, as well as the Roswell crashed saucer incident. But what may shock many is one of the earliest documented UFO events in American history. On July 13th, 1860, the Wilmington Tribune reported an incident that has never been explained. The article stated, on July 13th, 1860, a pale blue light engulfed the city of Wilmington, Delaware. Residents looked up to the evening sky to see its source, a 200-foot-long object cruising on a level course 100 feet above. Tailing behind the craft at 100-foot intervals were 3 very red and glowing balls. A fourth abruptly joined the other 3 after shooting out from the rear of the main object, which was giving off sparkles after the manner of a rocket. The lead object turned toward the southeast, passed over the Delaware River, then headed straight east until lost from view.
Here's another reason the UFO topic might be of interest to just an ordinary person who's never given us a thread of thought in their life. And it's this. What if you've gone through your whole life thinking that your reality consisted of this, and this, of that ball game, your family, and some of your hobbies and recreations. And let's say this is how you see your life. Simple everything. The reality of the UFO phenomenon could very well transform what you think you even are as a human being. Because if, let's just say, you have the example of a non-human intelligence that's operating on levels beyond anything you imagined, intellectually, in terms of consciousness, perhaps, what that means is that gives us an example of potentials that we may not have achieved ourselves. What I'm suggesting is that the UFO phenomenon can be a stimulus for an awakening, a discovery of who we actually are. And on an optimistic note, it might actually spur us into development as a species and as individuals to reach a much higher level of awareness of who we are than we'd ever thought possible before. That could be the upside, and I hope that is the true side of what we're dealing with. There's a dark side to this, I believe, but there's, it's true that every crisis breeds an opportunity, and this crisis might bring us an opportunity for an awakening of who we are, rather than just, looking down at the ground and our feet in front of us and thinking this is our life, but it doesn't have to be like that. So, UFO phenomenon is one very excellent way to enable us to open our eyes and see who we really are and what our potential is.
On November 23, 2019, a UFO was captured on video in Tucson, Arizona. The remarkable 40-minute video was released by the Department of Homeland Security and was recorded by a DHS spy plane equipped with FLIR optical technology. The spy plane's purpose was to discover drug smugglers over the Arizona regions. 20 minutes into the flight, the UFO was spotted and tracked for a full 40 minutes. The footage was examined by the UFO AC Research Group, and it was determined that the unusual aircraft was unnatural and unidentifiable. The DHS launched their own investigation and to this day have not produced an explanation. The speed of the craft was estimated to be 90 to 200 miles an hour, and it would make abrupt turns and variations in flight, even rotating at certain times. The length was determined to be 5 to 6 feet long, and a smaller ball-shaped craft flying with it at close proximity was captured in the footage. Most importantly, the craft did not appear to emanate heat or any form of energy. In 1973, CBS launched a production about the UFO phenomenon. Veteran news anchor Walter Cronkite was approached with the idea, to which Cronkite eagerly said yes. The reason for Cronkite's interest in the matter was due to his own personal experience witnessing a UFO in his younger years. In the 1950s, Cronkite was part of a news reporter team dispatched to a small South Pacific island to witness the testing of the latest Air Force missile. The reporters had been warned that photography and audio recordings were forbidden. Air Force security personnel monitored the perimeter with guard dogs at their sides. The reporters waited with anticipation for the event, and finally, the missile fired up and was ready to launch. Just then, a large flying disc appeared. Cronkite estimated that the object was 50 to 60 feet in diameter, with a dull gray color, and there didn't appear to be any visible means of propulsion. Due to the explosive noise around him, Cronkite was unable to determine whether the disc emitted any sound. Officers charged at the disc with their guard dogs, which hovered about 30 feet off of the ground. At this moment, the craft suddenly fired out a blue beam of light, which struck the missile. The beam also struck an officer and his dog. The missile was frozen in midair, about 70 feet from the launching pad, and the officer was frozen in mid-step, his guard dog frozen in midair. Suddenly, the missile exploded, and the disc quickly flew away. The officer and his dog recovered with no injuries. Cronkite estimated that the event transpired within 5 minutes. Following the encounter, officers urgently ushered all of the reporters into a concrete observation bunker, where they were addressed by an Air Force colonel. The reporters were told that the entire event was staged as a test to observe their reactions. The colonel added that flying saucers were probably not extraterrestrial, but what people were actually seeing were secret planes being tested by the Air Force. This test was designed to show the media how shocking it could be to suddenly view a new technology. Cronkite was dubious of this explanation, and to his dying day was certain that what he witnessed was not of this earth.
My friend, the engineer, after 20 years of trying to solve the problem of bridging the gap between the technologies, is invited in 1968, well, it wasn't 20 years by then. He was invited to Los Alamos for a project review conference. And they had about 18 scientists that all had been working on the project, various stages of the project, gathered around a big oval table in the Los Alamos headquarters with Edward Teller, the head of the Atomic Energy Commission, sitting at the head of the table. One of the aliens on the opposite side of the table from my engineering friend put in a white shirt and slacks so he would look less alien, but he still had his alien bigger head, bigger eyes, black eyes. And he was sitting in the conference, and the only people that he could understand everybody else because he was telepathic. And the only way he could communicate, though, was with the signs that he had developed with my engineer friend to answer the question. But here's a man, an alien from another planet, sitting in a conference in 1968 in Los Alamos headquarters on the progress of learning how to bridge the gap between the alien technology and ours, which we have never succeeded in doing.
In 1987, a terrifying event unfolded with 2 consecutive nights of UFO sightings. Green and white balls of light that formed into all types of shapes hovered directly above the Flushing Meadow Zoo, causing the animals to become greatly disturbed. On the morning following the second night of UFO sightings, the caretaker and other employees were horrified to discover every animal in the zoo were slaughtered by mutilation. They revealed that all of the animals were securely locked in their pens, with no sign of forced or keyed entry. But the corpses appeared as though they had been surgically autopsied or examined. Despite the mutilations, little or no blood was present. To avoid controversy, the zoo closed without explanation, and no trespassing signs were placed near the entrance. Park department personnel and police were summoned to remove the carcasses. Later, the zoo staff stated that the animal deaths and mutilations were eventually explained away as the work of vandals or ritualistic killers. However, it was determined that the perpetrators would have caused excessive noise while killing the animals, and would have left a significant amount of blood and other evidence behind. None of this evidence was present. No alarms sounded off, and the park police and other employees working nearby heard nothing. The zoo employees had reasonable concerns that this event could happen again. Some of the most compelling evidence that UFOs are real and originate from somewhere else comes from encounters involving the military itself. One such encounter involved the USS FDR crewman Chester Brzezinski, who described what occurred in the year 1958. He stated that he was on a shakedown cruise when a small light appeared in the sky that began following the ship. The mysterious white ball of light accelerated and came so close in range that Brzezinski could make out figures inside the craft. His impression was that these beings were not human. He described the size of the craft as 75 to 100 feet long, and at times would change colors. A strong heat wave emanated from the craft. He recalls feeling the heat on his face as he gazed upon the silhouettes of the occupants looking at them. Then, all at once, the base of the craft turned cherry red, and the object vanished from sight in a flash. The crew members were stunned, and soon after were abruptly transferred. A CIA investigation ensued, but as Brzezinski later stated, thus began a massive cover-up. There is no official record of this incident ever happening.
U.S. Air Force Captain Robert Salas relates his UFO incident. My security guard says, "Sir, there's a glowing red object hovering right outside the front gate. I'm looking at it right now. I've got all the men out here with their weapons drawn." The nuclear-tipped warheads went into a no-go condition, meaning they could not be launched. We lost anywhere between 16 to 18 ICBMs at the same time UFOs were in the area and were observed by airmen. Bob Kaminsky headed up the organization to look at all aspects of these shutdowns. He was told by his boss that the Air Force said, "Stop the investigation. Do no more on this and do not write a final report." This is very unusual, especially in light of the fact that headquarters was stating this was of extreme importance.
In about the 1960s, apparently our government made contact with an alien extraterrestrial visitor where they negotiated an arrangement to to provide a surface facility for the aliens to operate from in exchange for some technology. And that's scuttlebutt all over the area, but there is some substance in fact. So when the agreement was reached, the Alien Society laid some requirements on our government. They said we would have to provide a suitable habitat for the beings that they would send here from their society. And they gave us some very specific instructions for it. The laboratory facility had to have 2 nozzles in the shower, one for water and one for enzymes. And they would bring enzymes from their home planet to be put in a tank to be dispensed through the second nozzle. They rinse off with water, and the water and the enzymes are collected at the bottom, and the enzymes are filtered out, put back in the tank, and the water is flushed away. That was one of the requirements. Another was a food requirement. They don't eat alimentation such as ours. They brought alimentation from their home planet that we had to learn to culture here in Area 51 to provide a food source for their diet. Our government was charged with the responsibility to produce the food from their products continually for alimentation for the guest visitors. My engineer friend was one of the several engineers that were assigned to work with the extraterrestrials to try to bridge the gap between their technology and ours. And in 20 years of research trying to do so, they never succeeded in closing the gap. We were never able to convert that technology to ours. And the reason given by the aliens themselves is because in order to operate their equipment, they have to impart a certain mental input. And we have never learned to impart the input that's necessary to make the machines work. So their equipment responds to mind, to thought, and we have never learned to impart the proper thought to make any of it work.
March 2019. During a routine maneuver of a mini shuttle on the exterior of the ISS, a strange light appeared in the distance. The light gradually got closer to the orbiting laboratory. A viewer who witnessed the craft stated that he saw the object further away a few hours earlier. Gradually, the object moved closer, about 30 to 50 meters away from the station. He described the anomaly as massive in size and partially cloaked. But soon it was revealed by sunlight bouncing off it. He added that when the shape came into focus, it appeared to be a thick, round cylinder with a complex texture. Suddenly, the live feed was terminated. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Jonathan Weigand stated this: "It was buried in the side of a cliff. When I first saw it, I was scared. It was very strange. I think the creatures calmed me. It was unsettling. I think they were trying to communicate with me, I guess telepathically. It is really weird, and I don't believe in any of that stuff. Immediately after this, I was arrested. I thought they were going to kill me. He was saying, 'Are you a patriot? Do you like the Constitution?' I said, 'Yeah.' He replied, 'You have to sign these papers. You never saw this. I don't exist. And if you tell anybody, you'll just come up missing.'" U.S. Air Force Security Officer Larry Warren revealed an unsettling incident. They said, "We're going to show you a film that might help you put in perspective what you gentlemen have witnessed." They ran the film. The best clip on it showed the berets of the 5th Special Forces in Vietnam with low scrub brush and a guy with a camera. He turns the camera and this giant green thing rises out of the brush very slowly and deliberately, below where they are, up to face level. Shrubbery and brush is falling off this massive thing. I'll never forget that in my life. The only reason I have my records is because I was advised to steal some of them by an Air Force colonel, because he said they would vaporize me.
These things could come and go from the air down through the water, no problem. A very interesting story. It was 1979 when Filiberto Cardenas was pulled up a blue beam in broad daylight with 3 of his friends, taken to a little island. This wall opens up, he gets into a little flying saucer, and he goes out over the water very fast, down through the water. The water didn't touch the vehicle. Ended up in a garage down there where there were a bunch of flying saucers and stuff. And the head alien down there told him there were 700 working out of that base, and there were lots of other bases underground and undersea. I just saw red lights that were about as bright as Venus would be at its brightest, maybe a minus 4.5 magnitude. But they were wandering around in random motion, and obviously not aircraft or celestial objects. And my thought was, gee, is this what I read about last Sunday morning in the newspaper? Because the Washington Star had flying saucers in the headlines. And so nothing more was happening. So I, after about 10 minutes of watching, so I went on to bed. It was, pushing midnight by then. I got up early the next morning to get the newspaper, and sure enough, again, second Sunday morning in a row, the word flying saucers was in the headlines. The aliens put on a demonstration to the extent that the media could not ignore it and the government couldn't cover it up.